What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Captain Zach. That's right, throwback for you voicey veterans. What am I talking about? Today's subreddit is r/StoriesAboutKevin. I had not even a brain fart, just, I don't know. Alright guys, first up on the catalog, I've used that already. Story is called Middle School Kevin Punches Me, Tries to Frame Someone Else, and then brags about it to the guy he tried to frame. Back in 1993, I was a lowly 6th grader in a suburban southern Indiana middle school. Kind of socially awkward and geeky. I hated violence and never got in fights, which made this story all the more baffling. One day, during our lunch period, I asked to go use the restroom. Now, this restroom during lunch was kind of a dangerous no man's land full of mischief, smoking, and anything else hormonal adolescents could get away with, but I didn't care. I needed to go and figured that as long as I minded my own business, I'd be fine. I entered and used the bathroom, but as I was getting ready to leave, a group of older kids come in and zero in on me. I have no idea who they are and have never seen them before. I really don't care what they're up to. One of them walks up to me and asks me what I'm doing. I say nothing, washing my hands. Suddenly, without warning, he punches me square in the jaw. I'm in shock as I've never been punched that hard before and haven't since, but he just looks at me and goes, "My name is Tony Smith. You better not tell anyone." They just laugh and leave. I have no idea what the flippity-doo-dah just happened, and as the pain sets in, I realized he punched me so hard that blood is gushing out of my mouth. In shock, I run out of the restroom and back to the cafeteria, where I run up to the first adult I see, who just happens to be the principal. Shocked at seeing a student bleeding like that, he runs with me to the nurse's office, who helps me get the bleeding under control and has me lie down to get the shock and adrenaline out of my system. I tell the principal the whole story, and he tells me to just relax and he'll take care of it. I lay there for maybe 30 minutes, just wondering what the hell happened that day, when he returns and tells me that he needs me to come into the office real quick. "We have Tony Smith in the office, but he's insisting he didn't do anything to you." So I walk into the office where he and the assistant principal have just finished yelling at a boy who I've never seen before. "Is this the kid who punched you?" he asked me. I look at him confused. I tell him, no, I've never seen this kid before. Both he and the assistant principal look confused, and after a moment, tell Tony he can leave. I tell them I'm sure I remembered the name he told me correctly, so they got out a yearbook and have me look through it to see if I can locate the person who punched me. I can't find him anywhere, and I'm beginning to despair that I'm ever going to find this kid. A half hour later, Tony returns to the office and motions over the principal. "Kevin Jones was in class bragging that he punched some kid and got me in trouble," he says. The principal is kind of dumbfounded that someone is bragging about doing this, but thanks Tony and calls Kevin to the office. At this point, I'm sitting in a corner of the office where you can't immediately see me when you enter. In walks the kid who punched me, looking smug and carefree like he has no reason to worry about having just been called to the office after he bragged about punching me in class. My eyes go wide and I move behind him, looking at the principal. "That's him," I say. "That's the kid who punched me." Kevin's face looks like a mixture of shock and fear, like he can't figure out the chain of events that led him to this place. The principal tells Kevin to go into his office while I remain outside. Fortunately, he left the door open while he and the assistant principal reamed Kevin, so I could hear how it went down. Both the principal and the assistant principal sounded exasperated through the entire exchange, like they couldn't understand why the hell this Kevin thought he was being convincing. "Why did you punch him?" "I didn't." "Kevin, why did you punch that boy?" "I didn't! You have to believe me!" "Kevin, he looked straight at you and said that you were the one who punched him. This isn't a kid who's ever lied to us before. Why would he lie about you punching him?" "I don't know. He just wants to get me in trouble." Why would he want to get you in trouble if he doesn't even know you?
I don't know.
Kevin, we know you did it. Why did you do it? Kevin, after a brief silence.
I don't know. He wasn't supposed to tell.
You punched him so hard he was bleeding all over the place. What was he supposed to do? Kevin, defeated, accepted his fate. A week of out-of-school suspension. Strange enough, even after admitting what he did in the office, he told his dumbass friends that I had lied and framed him even though he didn't know me, and even threatened to jump me, although he had a difficult time with that since, as I said, he didn't know my name and couldn't ask anyone where I was. 6th and 7th grade in our school were on different floors of the building. I later found out Kevin had only started going to my school that year, the reason he wasn't in the yearbook, and he transferred out at the end of the year, still adamant he didn't do it. So I didn't have to avoid him for much longer. It was around March by then. Besides, I was a target of convenience. I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time to be the impetus for Kevin putting his poorly thought out plan into action. As for me, luckily he didn't knock out any teeth or seriously injure me. The blood came from a loose tooth, so aside from swelling and a nasty bruise, I was fine. The nurse called my mom and explained what happened, and I was pampered for the rest of the day. I suppose that my mother could have pressed charges, but it was probably more trouble than it was worth, and it was the early 90s, long before physical assault in school was met with mandatory arrest. To this day, I have no idea how Kevin thought he would get away with any of this, especially after he bragged about it to Tony, who was no doubt pissed off over being yelled at by the principal and assistant principal over something he didn't do. If he hadn't bragged about it to Tony, we probably would have had a lot harder time figuring out who he was. It's just so bizarre. It was only recently I came across this sub and connected the behavior of the kid to typical Kevin behavior. 90s school stories. It's just another time, dude. Obviously, I'm barely a 90s baby, April 21st, 1999, but a lot of the early 2000s culture and you know what I'm talking about. All that stuff is very similar to the 90s as far as I know. I always imagine these 90s stories, early 2000s stories with a CRT sort of filter going on in my mind. It's pretty great stuff. I like it. Very warm. Also, sorry you got your face punched. That sucks. Alright, this story is called The Phantom Kevis. Just tried this at home. Disaster! Every child born in the era of Star Wars has thought lightsabers were cool. I like Star Wars, so do most of my family. I'm actually a pretty devoted fan. If I could do it safely, yes, I would build my own lightsaber. Keyword, safely. Unfortunately, Kevin does not consider safety because he is a Kevin. He too enjoys a good lightsaber, and a replica was simply not good enough for a Kevin. I have a work area in my basement for home projects, such as basic repairs. I do a lot of DIY projects. Unlike Kevin, however, I adhere to safety standards. Following his recent legal trouble, which I have detailed before on this sub, he is staying with me. I'm the family Kevin Wrangler. I awaken at 2 a.m. 3 hours ago to a slightly familiar buzzing and knocking sound. As the fog of waking up in the middle of the night clears from my head, I recognize the sound. Someone is using a goddamn saw to cut down the door. I sprint like a madman down the stairs with a shotgun, assuming Kevin was asleep. For context, I've had a large amount of home invasions and attacks on my house before due to my location. I'm ready to kick ass. I loudly chamber around and yell out, "Get on the freaking ground!" To my amazement, I hear,
"No, don't shoot! It's me, Kevin!"
I had specifically told him not to do anything crazy while I was asleep, but if he followed orders, he wouldn't be a Kevin. And here, before my very eyes, he has sawed the mother fat king door off. Sorry, I was just reading what was there. I ask him what the frick frack is wrong with him, to which he replies,
"I needed the hinge metal for my lightsaber."
I ask what we are going to replace the door with.
"Don't worry, worry, OP. I made you a new one.
Lo and behold, a door straight out of Minecraft. A warped beam in the shape of a door that barely hangs down. If it rains, our house is gonna flood. I called a real repair company to come and fix it tomorrow. I then go back to bed and tell Kevin to go to sleep too. I say a prayer before going to bed. Nobody walks in when they see the open door. An hour ago, I awaken again. All I hear is the whooping and hollering of Kevin. Less Jedi and more Jar Jar. Obviously, the ability to speak does not make him intelligent because all I hear is him giddily babbling away to himself. I once again bound down the stairs in a panic. I find Kevin waving a homemade orange lightsaber in the kitchen, double-bladed, Darth Maul style. It is constructed from orange LED lights inside a plastic tube. Not content with his crappy homemade lightsaber, Kevin augmented it with freaking gasoline. That's right. This son of a gun, or of a lightsaber apparently, is dipping the end of the tube in a freaking gas canister. I said, "Hey, Kevin, you dumb mother lover." I used more courteous words. "Just what the fuck do you think you're doing?" Before I can say a word, dumbass lights both plastic tubes on fire, waving them around before they burn out quickly. He does a goddamn somersault and knocks his head on the door. He falls out of the crappy door he made head first while the still smoldering lightsaber goes airborne and lands under the fridge. I ignore the lightsaber and assume it's no longer flaming. Wrong! I go to tend to Kevin and make sure he doesn't need medical attention. He doesn't. Other than a few scrapes and a mild finger burn, he's fine. I come back inside to see the kitchen. My stomach drops and I feel a horrible, sinking feeling of doom as I gaze upon the flames approaching the still open can of gas. A fire rages under the fridge and around it as it spreads from the smoldering saber. I save the gas can by mere inches from exploding. I blast the remaining fire with an extinguisher, putting it out, and go back to my room to post about him here. As I hear whooping and stomping again, I'm gonna check him. Pray for me. Update! He partially destroyed a table I was building as a DIY project. He also messed with my phone while I was sleeping and changed the date back to last year because he
Thought it would be funny.
Okay, first of all, OP, you are a saint for just putting up with that Kevinness. That is outrageous. Oh my god. I love innocently stupid Kevins. That was just so freaking funny. Alright, this story is called Pregnant Kevin Can't Possibly Have COVID-19 Because She Washed Her Hands. My dad is a pediatrician working in the nursery at a few hospitals, and lately he has had quite a few stories of Kevins emerging in the midst of a public health crisis. A standard protocol right now is to test every single mom that comes in, regardless of whether they meet the exposure criteria, and to treat every woman as if she were positive until her test comes back negative. This involves the whole shebang, like being put in a negative pressure room with these obnoxiously loud fans to pump air out and all the extra personal protective equipment and sanitary protocols. Thankfully, tests are conducted in-house, so the turnaround time is pretty quick, 40 minutes to a few hours, which is great because these already stressed women want to get out of the negative pressure room ASAP. There was a whole fiasco earlier this year where one mother convinced the nurse that she was fine because she had been exposed more than 2 weeks before. So, said nurse ended up breaking protocol and contaminating a whole ward when mom eventually tested positive. But that's a story for another day. Needless to say, protocol is now strictly enforced. Anywho, this one woman comes in and insists that all of these extra measures and the hellishly loud room are completely unnecessary because there's absolutely no way that she has COVID-19. Sorry, miss, standard procedure, yada yada yada. After the sample is collected, they start the standard intake questions, not expecting much because this woman is adamant that she is negative. Have you come into contact with anyone who has tested positive for COVID-19 in the last 2 weeks?
Well, yeah, my boyfriend has been home sick the last week because of it, but it's okay, I washed my hands.
Would you care to elaborate? Are you in the same household? Is he staying in a different part of the house? What have you been doing to keep yourself safe?
Well, I washed my hands.
Turns out that this woman has been taking care of her sick boyfriend for the last week without practicing any sort of sanitary protocol like masks, quarantining him to a different part of the house, or sanitizing shared surfaces. They have been sleeping in the same bed and she even kissed him a few times.
But it's okay because I washed my hands.
Of course, the doctors and nurses were hella flabbergasted and kept trying to explain to this poor woman that it was almost guaranteed that she's positive. Maybe she's just ignorant, which is hard to believe with all of the PSAs, signage, etc. that are impossible to avoid. Nope, she insists that she looked it up and all she needed to do was wash her hands, which she did, so she's fine. They just cannot get through to this poor woman that yes, washing your hands is important, but definitely not the only thing that she should be doing. But no, she definitely knows better than the medical professionals. A few hours later, test results are back and you guessed it, positive. Cue surprised Pikachu face. Now, this poor mama Kevin has to be separated from baby until she tests negative twice, which could be up to 2 weeks. Last I heard from my dad, it's been a week and she still hasn't tested negative. But that doesn't stop her from trying to convince anyone who will listen to let them out early because she promises to wash her hand. Kevin's, they're just plague rats, man. All of them. Well, my couple dozen hours of Dishonored has prepared me for this. Alright, this story is called Kevin creates an unsafe work environment. I work with food, and often we use seasonings and powders that can cause us to sneeze if used improperly. As you can guess, Kevin often uses these powders and seasonings wrong, so that they cause pungent powders to billow up into the air and cause us to sneeze. We are required to wear masks, but they don't help prevent the sneezing. As I stare at Kevin, pulling out the seasoning packet, waiting for him to inevitably sneeze, I watched, terrified as he realizes he's about to sneeze, and pulls his mask down to sneeze into his hands.
What the hell, Kevin? Keep the mask on when you sneeze. That's what it's there for. But if I sneeze in there, it'll get all gross. I don't want my spit on it.
Well, Kevin, I don't want your spit in my lungs, you pathogen-spreading plague rat. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.